Steps, statues, saints, fountains, and faith. Summer in Rome. We're taking you there on this special edition of Currents News.
Americans still aren't able to come to Rome, but that's why we're bringing the Eternal City to you. Our first stop is Piazza Navona, Rome's most famous public square.
Vatican correspondent Melissa BUTZ is leading the way. Americans may not be able to travel to Europe, but she has our exclusive itinerary, complete with tour guides.
So if you can imagine, so many martyrs shed their blood and consecrated this ground right here.
Discover forgotten Catholic histories in piazzas and even in prisons, plus statues with a voice.
Did you know statues could talk? Well, in Rome they can. Let's hear what they have to say coming up next.
We are roaming around the Eternal City, and the journey starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. We've all been saying it's time for a trip, so let's at least take a virtual one. Since European vacations have been canceled for the time being, we let our Vatican correspondent roam around the Eternal City this summer. Melissa BUTZ isn't there to show us everything we're missing, but everything we have to look forward to the next time we get to escape to Italy. First up, Piazza Navona and a Catholic history you might not know about.
Welcome to Rome. Today we're touring Piazza Navona, a favorite of both sightseers and city dwellers alike. These cobblestone streets are normally full of artists, musicians, and tourists, but before the 15th century they had a very different use. Since the 1st century, this square was a center for trading and bartering, a circus and sports venue dedicated to the Emperor Domitian that could hold 30,000 spectators. Yet there was also a much darker side to this iconic piazza.
During this time, it was also the place of persecution of the Christians. So if you can imagine, so many martyrs shed their blood and consecrated this ground right here. It's right here where St. Agnes would have also been one of the many saints who was martyred for the faith.
In fact, her sacrifice is honored with a church dedicated to her, St. Agnes. It houses a relic of her skull. The stairs leading up to it are strategically placed to avoid water damage when Pope Innocent X's sister-in-law would flood the square.
If you can imagine, with end of 17th century technology, managed to flood this entire piazza, about 3.5 feet, in order to recreate naval battle scene.
Today, Piazza Navona's main attraction is the obelisk and the Fountain of the Four Rivers, commissioned by Pope Innocent X in 1650.
People couldn't even imagine that this beautiful fountain could actually support the weight of this amazing obelisk that actually is not from here, comes all the way from Egypt and goes back to about 1500 BC approximately. And so it's called a silent witness because this would have witnessed the Israelites before and during the Exodus.
Once in Rome, the obelisk bore witness to the martyrdom of Christians, the raising of the level of the entire square by 70 feet at the end of the 19th century, and the onslaught of millions of tourists that normally fill Piazza Navona today. In Piazza Navona, artists and musicians interact with tourists all the time, giving this square a friendly yet traditional Italian feel. It's the perfect place to take a passeggiata or a stroll throughout the city so you can get a taste of Rome's great culture and history. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
It's so nice to be in Rome and do as the Romans do. Next up, we're going back in time to explore a mysterious Roman tradition. This one is about a unique form of public criticism that lives on today. Statues with a voice. They've been chatting for centuries.
This statue is one of 6 in Rome known for speaking, a form of political dissent where written commentary criticizing political and religious leaders are posted right by the statue. It all started 500 years ago with this Pasquino, known as the first talking statue in Rome. The chatter began in 1501 when Cardinal Carafa, who owned the building attached to the sculpture, organized a literary competition. It quickly backfired when Romans started posting criticisms of the Curia and even the Pope himself.
We had also other popes, for example, the popes who lasted for too many years, according to the Romans. Then the prayers hang up on the Pasquino statues were, let's hope Holy Spirit to have a pope that loves us, that fears God, but that doesn't last so long.
Popes condemned the behavior but couldn't stop it. Some statues were taken off the streets and enclosed in museums. The Pasquino had guards placed by it day and night. Still, the sarcastic comments continued. Today is no different. Two notes hang by the statue.
The first one is mainly celebrating the Pasquino statue as the place where the cardinals had always been criticized. The other one is asking to the people to keep on doing these critics, mainly against the establishment.
Just around the corner is the Pasquino's closest friend, the Abate Luigi. He would often engage in banter with the Pasquino, like with other statues.
The Marforio asked, but is it true that all of the French are thieves? And the Pasquino answered, no, not all of them, but Bonaparte, which is the main part, yes. Bonaparte is the last name of Napoleon.
Witty conversations like these were common on statues in the most populated parts of Rome. Piazza Vidoni was chosen as Abate Luigi's home only around 100 years ago. Satire originally hung around Abate Luigi's neck until his head was likely stolen in the 1930s, making the commentary much more difficult to continue for this particular talking statue, one of 6 throughout the Eternal City. At the height of these statues' popularity, really only Roman nobility and academics could read and write. So what they did was they would share what was written with their neighbors. And this tradition still continues today, with these anonymous notes being called the voice of the Roman people. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
Romans have long been outspoken, gathering in piazzas across the city to talk politics, parties, and even plot. Next stop, a pit stop just inside Rome's northern gate, a place where early Christian pilgrims used to take a short break and chat on their own journey to the Eternal City.
Welcome to Piazza del Popolo, one of Rome's biggest squares, now known for hosting concerts and political manifestations. But from the Middle Ages on, this square was the very first place that Christian pilgrims saw upon entering Rome. It was through this grand doorway that the early Christians fulfilled their dream of coming to the Eternal City. One of the most famous pilgrims who came was Queen Christina of Sweden, a 17th century royal who created a scandal when she abdicated her throne and converted to Catholicism. To prepare for her visit, Roman expert Livia Galante explains that the arch was actually completely redone for her visit by Pope Alexander VII, who baptized her into the Catholic faith.
This was a big victory for the papacy, so she was welcomed with all the possible honors, and Gian Lorenzo Bernini was requested to refurbish the arch in order to welcome the Queen in the most grand style.
Upon their arrival, early pilgrims like Queen Christina stopped at the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo. It was built by Pope Paschal II in 1099 and expanded by Sixtus IV in the 15th century. It's where believers thanked the Blessed Mother for their safe travels.
Most venerated image of Our Lady is above the main altar, is one of the most venerated icons of Rome, the Madonna del Popolo, and it is this image that pilgrims revered after their pilgrimage, after they arrived in the Eternal City on the footsteps of the saints and the martyrs.
Once in the square, the obelisk now stands as the centerpiece. It was transferred from Circus Maximus in 1589.
From there, in the 1580s, a pope named Sixtus V moved the obelisk to decorate the square that welcomed the pilgrims.
The towering pillar witnessed the persecution of Christians in Circus Maximus, to only later embrace the city's newcomers, who were exhausted from their journey to the Eternal City. Throughout Throughout the centuries, Piazza del Popolo has seen dramatic changes and additions, but the one element that has remained untouched since the 15th century is its namesake, the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo, the original welcoming site for Christian pilgrims. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
Stay with us. We're on the move now. Our next steps, the Spanish Steps.
Did you know that Rome's Piazza di Spagna holds a special devotion to the Immaculate Conception? Find out why when we roam the Spanish Steps, coming up next.
And then to the oldest jail in Rome, made for the worst enemies of the state. What were two saints doing there?
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
Welcome back to this special edition of Currents News. I hope you're making yourself comfortable. We are currently roaming around the Eternal City. The coronavirus crisis is stopping Americans from traveling to Europe this summer, but it's not stopping us from bringing a little bit of Italy to you virtually with Vatican reporter Melissa BUTZ. Get ready for one of the most iconic landmarks in the world, the Spanish Steps.
Welcome to Piazza di Spagna, named in honor of the Spanish embassy to the Holy See. This tourist hotspot is known for its characteristic Spanish steps, but it also holds a deeply religious meaning. Every year on December 8th, the Pope goes to Piazza di Spagna to pay homage to Our Lady on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. He places a bouquet of flowers at the base of the statue, while the head of the fire department places a wreath of flowers on her arm, since they have the tallest ladder in the city. Roman expert KIRON explains this tradition began in 1857 when Pope Pius IX had the column installed in the square. It was to remind tourists of their faith after many stopped visiting the basilicas and turned their attention to more secular aspects of the Eternal City.
So here you had a reminder of what was really important in life. And here was a woman who had not sinned at all. Behind there's the building of the Propaganda Fede, and that was deliberately also built there because that building was to train priests to become missionaries in different parts of the world.
But the square's main attraction is still the famed 135 Spanish steps. They were built by an Italian architect and paid for largely by the French and the Vatican. The stairs link Piazza di Spagna to the French church at the top, consecrated by Pope Sixtus V in 1585.
The idea of building the Spanish steps connect the Trinità dei Monti, the church, to the piazza at the bottom, came up from a Cardinal Mazarin who worked under two great French kings, and one of them was Louis XIV, who was the Sun King. But it was only come to fruition 100 years later.
It was Clement XI who eventually carried out the project at the beginning of the 1700s, around 100 years after the fountain of the Ugly Boat was placed in the square by yet another pope.
Well, on the fountain you can definitely see the bees, which represent the Barberini family, who Urban VIII comes from, and he's the one who commissioned the fountain.
Rumor has it Pope Urban VIII designed the boat submerged in water in memory of the flood in the Tiber River in 1598. The truth is, the water pressure connecting the aqueduct to the fountain is simply not strong enough for it to be built any higher. All of Rome's piazzas were commissioned in part by various popes. In fact, Piazza di Spagna includes requests and actions by at least 6 popes, making it the square we know and love today. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
Now to an ancient prison created to house the biggest enemies of Rome. But what were two saints doing there in shackles, and what does it have to do with the foundation of the Catholic Church?
These words written behind me, the MAMERTINE prison of the Holy Apostles Peter and Paul, announce what lies behind these iron gates. In fact, it is here that the two saints were arrested and held while evangelizing in the Eternal City. In the 7th century BC, Mamertine prison was the main jail in Rome, located in front of the city on Capitoline Hill. Today, its memory is sacred, especially these two ancient jail cells built right on top of each other. Carcer is the upper area, where Roman guards kept watch over the prisoners below. Expert CARLO MUNNS says it was reserved for the worst enemies of Rome. Criminals were thrown down this hole into the dungeon before stairs were built to connect the two levels. In 67 AD, Peter and Paul were among those arrested. Statues and relics of the saints recall their presence, along with other markings on the wall.
At the beginning of the stairs, we see a place which is a memory of the passage of Peter. Just bringing down him to the jail, he hit it with his head, the marble, and there was a memory here made for memory of this place.
But it's Tullianum, the cell below, where Peter and Paul were imprisoned during Nero's persecutions of Christians. This small area held 49 people while the apostles were here, and is said to be the site of a miracle.
What's important for Christians in this water, which sprang out for the intervention of Peter and Paul, 47 people were baptized here. 2 of them were really the jailers. They were also martyred again also after their conversion.
While water flowed centuries before, it had dried up in the previous 900 years. That's why at the beginning of the 4th century, the cell was redesigned as a place of worship. This sacred transformation allowed it to be preserved instead of destroyed like other monuments. An altar was installed, the water source protected, and the column which bound Peter and Paul was guarded. They all have since been removed and can now be found in the museum just above the cement cells. This leaves the prison in its original condition, as when the apostles were awaiting their death nearly 2,000 years ago. This prison, while Saints Peter and Paul were inside, actually resembled a sewage tank, since prisoners were often forgotten and starved, since this was the final step before their execution. However, we know that for St. Peter, he was crucified upside down here in Rome, while St. Paul was beheaded, since he could not be crucified as a Roman citizen. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
Stay with us for the final leg of our journey. Angels could just guide us back home.
Did you know angels actually recount Jesus' passion and death in Rome? I'll show you how, coming up.
Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. It's the final leg of our Roman adventure. Time now for a fascinating look at the often overlooked heavenly angels along the bridge to Castel Sant'Angelo.
Known for its appearance in Angels and Demons, Rome's Castel Sant'Angelo, or Castle of the Holy Angels, is a popular tourist spot. However, many overlook the bridge in front, a significant bridge that takes us back to a critical moment in Christianity. The Holy Angel Bridge was originally built in 134 AD as a passageway to pagan Roman Emperor Hadrian's mausoleum. But in 590, after the fall of the Roman Empire, St. Michael the Archangel miraculously appeared to Pope Gregory the Great above the castle, giving it a new religious meaning. Art historian Elizabeth Lev says the castle became even more noteworthy as Christian pilgrims flocked to Rome in the 1300s. But it took another 300 years before the iconic angels were erected.
Clement IX Rospigliosi starts thinking, you know what? We need to jazz up this bridge. And it's 1675 is going to be a Jubilee year, so why not make it even more exciting for the pilgrims? And they do it by adding these angels.
The statues were designed by 70-year-old Bernini, who as a devout Catholic was thinking about the end of his life. The angels represent the artist's thoughts on the way to salvation, shown through Jesus' passion.
You start at the beginning of the road with St. Peter and St. Paul. St. Peter is telling you this is the road where the humble find forgiveness. St. Paul is telling you this is the road where the proud find their comeuppance. And you see these instruments.
They're displayed in each angel's hands, ranging from the whips to Jesus' garments to the cross and the sponge with vinegar that quenched Jesus' thirst.
These angels are really designed as you go to St. Peter's, where you will receive your plenary indulgence. This is a way of reminding you of what that salvation, what that forgiveness cost you.
Elizabeth explains that today tourists in the Eternal City often miss the importance of the bridge. Now the pathway is crowded with vendors selling items on the ground, causing pilgrims to look down instead of up at the angelic portrayal of the Way of the Cross. Just as this pathway is a symbolic crossing over into salvation, popes also used it to save themselves, escaping from the Holy See in a secret tunnel that led all the way to Castel Sant'Angelo. In fact, in 1527, Pope Clement VII was the very first one to use this escape route while escaping the sack of Rome. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
And that wraps up this special edition of Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for roaming with us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.